There are more than 3 trillion trees on the planet, which amounts to approximately 400 trees per person. Just think of this number. According to various estimates, at least 20% of the oxygen in Earth's atmosphere is produced by terrestrial plants, including trees, while the remaining 80% is produced by oceanic phytoplankton and algae. Trees are everywhere, and among the multitude of tree species, there are some that can poison you in the most insidious ways, even if you don't touch them. Nonetheless, people have been using poisonous trees for their purposes since ancient times. In this video, you will learn what is the most dangerous tree in the world, which toxic tree makes it dangerous even to breathe nearby, and what uses have people found for these deadly plants. Let's take a look at them. Just be careful. These trees can kill. To watch more interesting episodes, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. All right, what comes to mind when you think of poisonous and dangerous trees? Perhaps you believe they only exist in wild tropical forests, where only extreme adventure seekers go. In reality, various dangerous poisonous trees grow on all continents, except Antarctica, and they are far from growing only in the wild. Moreover, a dangerous tree might be right next to you, even if you live in an urban area with only decorative gardens. For example, this beautiful tree with bell-shaped flowers is widespread around the globe as a decorative tree. Who would have thought that in the past it was used for gruesome ritual murders? Well, you might argue that you are safe as long as you don't touch an unfamiliar tree or eat its fruit. But that's not entirely true. Some seemingly harmless trees can pose a serious threat to health, even if you simply stand near them. For instance, look at this charming little tree with bright berries. When damaged, it releases fumes that can poison you if you just inhale them. By the way, dangerous trees can affect you even if you are not that close to them. How about a tree that sometimes explodes? Do you think this is something out of a science fiction movie? Nope. We're still talking about our planet, and such a tree really grows in the tropical regions of North and South America. This formidable creation of Mother Nature is known as Hura crepitans, the sandbox tree. It is also commonly referred to as the dynamite tree and the monkey no-climb tree. It has a very intriguing reproductive strategy, which we'll discuss in a moment. The tree grows in tropical regions of North and South America, including the Amazon rainforest. It can also be found in certain parts of Tanzania. The tree can grow up to 60 meters high, and its large egg-shaped leaves can be up to 60 centimeters wide. But the most interesting part about the dynamite tree is its seed pods. From a distance, they might look like small pumpkins, measuring 5 to 8 centimeters in diameter. These seed pods are true explosives that burst with a loud noise. On average, the seeds scatter up to 30 meters at a speed of 250 kilometers per hour. The force of this mini explosion is enough to injure people or livestock. Moreover, the seeds are poisonous. They contain quercetin, a toxic protein that can affect the digestive system. Symptoms of poisoning include headaches, diarrhea, and vomiting, and in severe cases, even bleeding. The trunk of the tree is also covered in sharp spikes and exudes a toxic sap. So, what are the uses of such a dangerous tree? The very seed pods were used in colonial British West Indies as sandboxes for blotting ink. The wood of the dynamite tree is quite light, which is why it's used for canoes and furniture. Additionally, it is rumored that fishermen use the caustic sap to stupefy fish, making it easier to catch it. The sap was also used for a highly sought-after purpose by local hunters. They smeared it on the tips of their arrows. Moreover, the indigenous peoples of America once used this tree to create remedies for skin diseases, rheumatism, and worms. Finally, since it's also toxic, oil extracted from its seeds can be used to produce something completely non-edible, namely biodiesel and soap. This tree has so many applications that it misleads people into a false sense of security. But don't be fooled, it remains poisonous and dangerous. This was demonstrated by an incident in 2023 when 14 middle school students in Lam Dong Province, Vietnam, were hospitalized after eating dynamite tree seeds that had fallen onto the school grounds. This raises a legitimate question. What are these trees doing near public spaces? The fact is that dynamite trees are often planted in many schools in central Vietnam. It's just the way things have been. One might be surprised that not everyone is aware of how dangerous this plant is. But even in Tanzania, where it's found in gardens, people are not always aware of its toxic properties. Well, at least you have been warned. And what about this good-looking tree? It looks quite harmless, doesn't it? But even its name is associated with Cerberus, the three-headed dog guarding the gates to the underworld. Yet, it has a very pleasant jasmine fragrance and beautiful white five-petaled flowers. This is the tree known as Cerbera odalum. It is also called Otholanga and the suicide tree. This plant can reach up to 12 meters in height and resembles a large shrub. It is widespread in the state of Kerala in India. It can also be found in South and Southeast Asia, as well as in Queensland, Australia. Recently, it has become popular as a decorative plant in gardens and parks. But don't be tricked by its beauty. It has earned its notorious reputation for a reason. Its fruits, the size of a softball, are red, smooth, and round, resembling an apple, and capable of floating on water. They contain a large toxic seed in the core, which can stop your heart if ingested. On average, death occurs within 4 hours after poisoning. Even half a seed can be lethal, although the outcome depends on the person's body weight. The culprit is the toxin cerberin, which affects the cardiovascular system. Overall, the toxic mechanism of this plant hasn't been fully studied, and there is no direct antidote yet. However, it's possible to treat a patient if they are promptly taken to the hospital. Cerbera odalum is very similar to oleander, another highly toxic plant from the same family. However, oleander typically grows to an average height of 2 meters. In the 19th century in Madagascar, where Cerbera is also found, thousands of people died annually after consuming its seeds during special trials of ordeal. Natives believed it helped determine if suspects were guilty of witchcraft or other crimes. A 2004 study by scientists showed that the tree is the cause of numerous weekly deaths in the aforementioned Indian state of Kerala. Statistically, Cerbera odalum accounts for 50% of all plant poisoning cases and 10% of all poisoning cases in Kerala. However, it is the seeds of the tree that are deadly, so it's safe to touch and smell the tree. Would you dare to do it? Do you think Cerbera is not sinister enough for our collection of killer trees? Then meet the Gympie-Gympie, more formally known as Dendroctid moroides. According to legend, the pain induced by this plant can literally drive people insane. It grows in the tropical forests of Australia and Malaysia, and is actually quite ordinary looking. A tree with large heart-shaped leaves that can reach up to 10 meters in height. Its fruits are tiny and somewhat resemble mulberries. The legend has it that one of the early settlers, who mistakenly used the leaves as toilet paper, shot himself to end the unbearable pain. Though this indeed sounds more like a legend, since just tearing a leaf would immediately cause a burning pain. You might wonder, could the pain be endured or alleviated somehow? The answer is that the tree's extremely painful sting can make you suffer for weeks or even months. It is no wonder that this plant is also called the stinging tree, stinging bush, and Queensland stinger. Gympie-Gympie is considered the most poisonous plant in Australia, causing poisoning through touch. This effect comes from neurotoxins similar to those of the cone snail. They are called gympiotides. These toxins penetrate the skin through the hair-like structures on the leaves, which are akin to tiny injection needles, and affect the nerves. So it's better not to touch the leaves and stems of the Gympie-Gympie, even for a fraction of a second. Let's see what happens when a person does touch the Gympie-Gympie. Initially, the affected area will feel like it's burning. After a few hours, the pain will subside and you will feel as if the affected part of your body is trapped by a slammed car door. Of course, this is highly unpleasant, to say the least, and even the word subside seems inappropriate here. Finally, allodynia may set in during the last stage. This phenomenon occurs within a few days after being stung by the plant, when harmless actions, like taking a shower or scratching the affected area, will bring back the pain. Side effects can include hives and swollen lymph nodes. In 1963, Gympie-Gympie brushed against the face and body of Ernie Ryder, a conservative officer with the Queensland Parks and Wildlife Service. Unfortunately, he experienced burning sensations for 2 years. Even 10-year-old laboratory samples can still sting. Interestingly, the flower clusters of Gympie-Gympie are also covered in poisonous hairs, but are quite edible if the latter are removed. Some animals also eat the leaves. For example, they make a lovely feast for the nocturnal beetle Prociptera mestersi and the moth Prorodes mimica. And this poisonous plant, paradoxically, might hold the key to creating new painkillers. It is the tree Nettle Urtica ferox, found in the coastal and lowland forests of New Zealand. Its other names in Maori are onga-onga, taraonga, taraonga-onga, and oka-oka. The Australian stinging tree Gympie-Gympie and the New Zealand nettle both belong to the nettle family, but they diverged millions of years ago and developed differently. Onga-onga is a woody shrub that can grow up to 3 meters tall. Its pale green leaves are very thin, and along with the stems are covered in stiff, stinging hairs that can be up to 6 millimeters long. The pain from their sting can last several days. Nevertheless, as with Gympie-Gympie, the fauna doesn't avoid onga-onga. It is the primary food source for the larvae of the New Zealand red admiral butterfly. In addition to them, opossums, goats, and deer also eat the leaves. The seeds are dispersed by wind and birds. According to fossil records, the flightless moa bird once had a particular fondness for this nettle. Strong toxins in onga-onga may have developed as a defense against this bird. Today, if a person touches this harsh nettle, they will experience all the effects of the toxin trifidin that its spines contain. This means they will have hives, numbness, and itching. In severe cases, blurred vision and confusion can also occur. There has been one recorded death. A lightly dressed hunter died 5 hours after passing through an area where Urtica ferox grew. Given all this, it's strange that onga-onga was used for medical purposes, but it was. The Maori used the bark of this tree nettle and the leaves of the intoxicating pepper kava-kava boiled together to make a remedy for eczema and other ailments. Additionally, a decoction of the leaves and young twigs soaked in boiled water was allegedly used for stomach pains. The Maori didn't stop there. It is documented that they ate onga-onga. They would remove the leaves and outer bark, cook the stems, and consume them. They also ate the inner bark layer, which is said to be sweet. But let's get back to the pain remedy. Strangely enough, scientists are searching for it in plants that cause pain. A few years ago, a group of researchers obtained seeds of the New Zealand nettle and grew them under laboratory conditions. The group was comprehensively studying effective pain relief methods and was considering various plants as materials for such remedies. The scientists aim to compare onga-onga with other nettles from the same family to determine if they all use the same toxins. The main goal is to find more effective ways to manage pain without side effects and addiction. Now let's get to a tree that produces one of the most bitter and poisonous substances in nature, strychnine. This alkaloid is found in the seeds of the poisonous nut tree Strychnos nuxvomica. The plant is also called the strychnine tree, poison fruit, semen strychnos, and Quaker buttons. It grows in India and Southeast Asia. Once upon a time, the strychnine contained in this plant was used as an ingredient in health tonics. Yes, a substance that causes prolonged spasms was considered an effective stimulant. Moreover, strychnine gained fame as one of the most common poisons in detective stories. It was featured in Agatha Christie's first novel, The Mysterious Affair at Styles and Hitchcock's Psycho. The strychnine tree is a medium-sized tree that grows up to 20 meters high. Its trunk is short and thick, and the leaves are oval, smooth on both sides, and reach up to 10 centimeters in length and almost 8 centimeters in width. The tree blooms during the cool season from March to May and has an unpleasant smell. Its fruits are the size of a large apple and are a soft orange shade when ripe. Inside, there are 5 very hard seeds with a characteristic shine. These seeds contain about 1.5% strychnine, and the dried flowers contain 1%. The bark has brucine and other poisonous compounds. The indigenous people of South America used strychnine from the seeds as poison for their arrows. Today, its use is strictly regulated in many countries. Most accidental poisonings occur through powder inhalation or absorption through the skin. However, there can be other scenarios as well. For example, one study reports a case of poisoning in a 39-year-old man. He was hospitalized with a preliminary diagnosis of acute myalgia attack and generalized body ache. Simply put, acute pain in muscles and throughout the whole body. During the medical history interview, he informed the doctors that he had made 100 milliliters of a decoction from 6 leaves of the local tree Eti, which is the same Strychnos nuxvomica in the local language, and then ate the leaves. The doctors measured his pulse. It was quite slow, but the other indicators were within the norm. A few hours later, he began experiencing muscle twitches in his arms and forearms. In the end, the poor man was saved. But unfortunately, not everyone affected by Strychnos nuxvomica is that lucky. This patient was generally in quite good health. But there are those whom Strychnos nuxvomica does not harm. For example, hornbills and monkeys, such as the gray langur, eat it without issue. Now, let's consider the opposite situation, when a plant is harmless to us, but is a real trap for birds. This is even reflected in its New Zealand name, the birdcatcher tree. Officially, it's called Bunya-Bunya, also known as para. It grows in New Zealand, on Norfolk and Lord Howe Islands in Australia, and in Hawaii in the USA. At first glance, it doesn't seem particularly dangerous. It has no thorns like acacia, no poisonous fruits or plant jaws like the Venus flytrap. So what makes it deadly? Keep on watching to find out. Compared to our previous subjects, this is a relatively small tree, on average 6 meters tall. The leaves are shiny and have smooth edges. The secret lies in the seeds and non-toxic but still dangerous fruits. The latter are 2 to 3 centimeters long and sticky, which is why they often stick to small birds. As the seeds mature, they turn black and also become sticky. On the Seychelles, a related species, Pisonia grandis is found. Seabirds regularly die because of its sticky, sharp, hooked seeds. For a tiny seabird weighing 100 grams, just a few seeds are enough to prevent it from flying. The fact is that the seeds of Pisonia have evolved to be transported on feathers to remote islands, thus spreading the species over long distances. Pisonia brugnana has the same spreading mechanism. Pisonias in the Seychelles bloom and bear fruit twice a year. Over years of evolution, nature has made this phenomenon coincide with the peak arrival of seabirds on the islands. As a result, every year, and we can't stress this enough, hundreds of thousands of seabirds get entangled and trapped. Many young chicks die of starvation. Sometimes birds entangled in the seeds do end up lucky, like those flying over the private island of Corsine. There, conservation specialists capture birds caught in natural traps and clean them. Why do these trees kill birds? Alan Berger, an ecologist from the University of Victoria, tried to solve this mystery. There were 2 hypotheses. The first was that the plants obtained more nutrients this way from bird carcasses decomposing above their roots. According to the second theory, such a starter fertilization kit was needed, not by the tree itself, but by its seeds to sprout. Through experiments, Berger proved that Pisonia didn't gain any obvious benefit from the fatal entanglement of birds. Such seeds did not show increased germination or survival rates. Live birds would add even more fertilizers through their droppings. As a result, the researcher concluded that it was the live birds that were key to the spread of Pisonia, and their deaths were not the goal but an unfortunate side effect. As long as enough birds survive to carry the seeds to new lands, the trees will continue to produce sticky seeds. However, the fragile, easily broken branches of Pisonia can also take root and give rise to a new tree when they fall to the ground. On Lisiansky Island, 1,600 kilometers northwest of Hawaii, there was only one Pisonia tree in the mid-1990s. Today, it turned into a dense thicket almost 30 meters wide. Many boobies and terns nest there. How many birds the tree has killed remains a mystery. However, in some places, Pisonia has almost disappeared because it is targeted by various fauna. In particular, it's favored by opossums, goats, and wild cattle. Because of its bright flowers, those who live in New Zealand, especially in its northern part, buy it as a decorative plant. Hawaiian birdcatchers use the sticky fruits to catch birds for making feather capes and other items. Our next tree character, with the enchanting name Angel's Trumpet, or Brugmansia, can be particularly dangerous for those larger than birds, children, and pets. This large shrub is adorned with elongated bell-shaped flowers, but do not be fooled by its enticing looks. They can have toxic and hallucinogenic effects if tasted, something that children and animals might do. In this case, the flowers are the most dangerous. However, the most poisonous parts of the plant are the seeds and leaves. Brugmansia contains tropane alkaloids such as atropine, scopolamine, and hyoscine. So even if a child simply touches the petals, it's better to see a doctor. The effect, of course, depends on the child's age and body size. Despite all the dangers, Brugmansia is a fairly popular ornamental plant of the nightshade family. Indeed, Brugmansia is grown in gardens around the world despite its danger. All 7 species of this plant are known to be cultivated. It is believed that they have disappeared in the wild because some animal species that dispersed their seeds have gone extinct. Now, Brugmansia fruits shrivel on the plants without leaving offspring. But in gardens, this plant thrives. The large flowers begin to emit an especially enticing fragrance closer to nightfall, designed to attract the nocturnal hawk moth. It does this very well. One scentless red-flowered species, Brugmansia sanguinea, is pollinated by long-billed hummingbirds. Let's carefully get closer to examine the details. This plant can grow up to 3 to 11 meters tall. The leaves are large, up to 30 centimeters long, and are often covered with fine hairs. The angel's trumpet, the flower itself, can be up to 50 centimeters long. You often see orange flowers in pictures on the internet, but in general they can be white, yellow, pink, green, and red. In the early stages, Brugmansia usually grows straight up on a single stem until it reaches its first major fork at a height of 80 to 150 centimeters. It won't flower until this fork forms, and flowers will only appear on the new shoots above it. Brugmansia and the butterfly Placidula erionasa have quite a particular interaction. The latter uses Brugmansia suaveolens as one of the primary food sources for its larvae. These larvae absorb the plant's alkaloids, which are retained through all the metamorphosis stages, from pupa to adult butterfly. The adult butterfly then uses them as a defense mechanism to become less attractive to predators. People have widely used Brugmansia for various purposes. For example, indigenous peoples of South America used it in medicine and spiritual ceremonies. They made poultices, infusions, and ointments to treat pain, dermatitis, arthritis, and infections. The plant was also used in a gruesome ritual murder. South American people had a tradition of burying the wives and slaves of important people along with the deceased. To do this, they were given a poisonous, deadly concoction, Brugmansia mixed with corn beer and tobacco leaves. Now, this truly sends shivers down the spine. Over the past decades, there have also been several well-known accidents associated with this plant. In 1994, in Florida, 112 people were hospitalized after consuming Brugmansia, prompting one municipality to ban the cultivation and sale of the plant. In 2022, in the UK, a 50-year-old woman was admitted to the hospital with blurred vision and asymmetrical pupils. She had been pruning plants in her garden when she suddenly began experiencing these symptoms. It turned out the victim had Brugmansia, and she had rubbed her eye after touching the plant's leaves and flowers. Now let's move on to a rather unusual tree. Its cones are larger than a bowling ball. Meet the Bunya-Bunya, that can grow up to 15 meters high. Its scientific name is Araucaria bidwilli. It has also been dubbed the Widowmaker. Why did it earn this sinister nickname? And why do some consider it the perfect Agatha Christie-style murder weapon? Let's find out. This is a large coniferous tree of the Araucariaceae family. Its trunk is unbranched and reaches up to 1.5 meters in diameter. The bark is dark brown or black and flaky. The arrangement of the branches gives the tree an egg-shaped silhouette. The leaves are small and stiff, with a sharp tip that easily penetrates the skin. This is the first, but not the primary, danger. This tree is most commonly found in Queensland, Australia. The tallest living Bunya-Bunya is located in the Bunya Mountains National Park in Australia and has reached 51.5 meters. The male cones are up to 20 centimeters long, while the female cones are much larger, 30 centimeters long and 20 centimeters wide, approximately the size of a rugby ball. Female cones can weigh up to, mind you, 10 kilograms. These are some of the largest cones among all coniferous trees. Each cone is packed with about 100 seeds, ranging from 2.5 centimeters to 5 centimeters in size. What can you make from them? If you check YouTube, you'll find numerous videos on cooking Bunya-Bunya. Most of them are made in Australia or New Zealand. And if you think it's a simple task, Just imagine extracting 100 seeds, then boiling them, and peeling each one by hand with a sharp knife. Bunya pine nuts taste like firm potatoes with a nutty flavor. Those who have a lot of free time on their hands can even grind them into flour for pancakes, pasta, or shortbread cookies. The Aboriginal people also loved to feast on these cones. About every 3 years, when they ripened, gathered in the Bunya Mountains for a sort of harvest festival to enjoy the kernels, settle disputes, arrange marriages, and, of course, trade. Tribes from hundreds of miles away would show up for this event. As you can see, the Bunya-Bunya held an immense cultural significance. But let's return to the dark side of this tree. Imagine you decide to sit in its shade or simply walk beneath it, thinking about something pleasant. The first unpleasant surprise waiting for you is the branches, which easily break off and fall. But far more dangerous is the multi-pound cone that can detach from the top and plummet down with the destructive force of a bowling ball. Do you remember this tree's sinister nickname? It doesn't seem surprising, given how heavy its cones are. That's why it holds an honorary place in our list of killer trees. Sometimes such dangerous trees are even fenced off in national parks. For example, there was a case when a falling cone killed a cockatoo in Parramatta, a suburb of Sydney. And in late 2022, mature cones started falling from a bunya pine in Fuller Park, USA. As a result, officials fenced off the entire area for several weeks due to the risk of injury. Now, let's discuss our next dangerous character. As legend has it, it was so poisonous that you couldn't even sleep in its shade. One of its common names is the Tree of the Dead. Sounds eerie, doesn't it? However, its scientific name doesn't sound scary at all. English yew, or Taxus baccata. Its range is quite wide. It grows in many places, including Europe, Asia, and Africa, but it's most commonly found in southern England. For example, it is planted as a hedge around churchyards or cemeteries because it symbolizes death. You've got that right. The tree is indeed used for decorative purposes and not to poison arrowheads, as was the case with some poisonous plants we've mentioned before. This is despite the fact that almost all parts of the plant are toxic. You can be poisoned even by inhaling vapors from damaged parts of the yew. Those parts might carry deadly danger if they get into your blood through the skin or get ingested. The culprits are numerous toxic compounds, particularly taxine alkaloids. Consuming even a small number of the fine leaves can be fatal. Although they look quite harmless, dark green, small, up to 4 centimeters long and 3 millimeters wide. The English yew itself has an average height of 10 to 20 meters. Its crown can reach almost 7 meters in diameter. The canopy of this evergreen tree provides excellent shelter for many birds. The yew is a conifer, so it doesn't produce berries, but rather unique fruits. These are red, berry-like structures surrounding the seeds, called arils, which contain the seeds inside. Altogether, these can be considered evolutionary transformed cones. Arils are the only non-toxic part of the yew. They taste sweet, but should not be eaten. However, in nature they are consumed along with the seeds by thrushes, waxwings, and other birds, which then disperse the undamaged seeds with their droppings. However, the seeds are inedible for humans. Not only are they bitter, but they are also poisonous. But some birds can crack them open and eat them without any problems. These include hawfinches, greenfinches, and great tits. This tree is also a super-ager. The Fortingall yew in Scotland had a circumference of 16 to 17 meters in the 18th century and later branched out into several trunks. Experts estimate its age to be between 2,000 and 3,000 years, with some optimistic calculations suggesting it could be up to 5,000 years old. But don't let its decorative role fool you into a false sense of security. Yew poisonings often occur among both wild and domestic animals that accidentally eat this plant. The lethal dose for an adult human is 50 grams of conifer needles. Even in dried form, the toxicity remains for several months and even increases due to moisture evaporation. If the poisoning is not severe, it is treated with atropine. The cause of poisoning can vary. As we've mentioned earlier, almost any part of the yew can be toxic. For example, in one case, poisoning was induced by inhaling the sawdust. However, most incidents revolve around leaves. There was one particularly gruesome case. A resident of British Columbia experienced breathing problems. Despite the doctor's resuscitation efforts, the outcome was tragic. It was later established that the victim's stomach contained a considerable amount of semi-digested needle leaves and small twigs. It turned out they came from Taxus baccata. The man found this treacherous plant in a nearby forest and ate some of the needles for unknown reasons. The amount turned out to be fatal. As for our last tree character for today, you should avoid not only touching, but also breathing or rubbing your eyes near it. The best thing you can do is keep a safe distance. Indeed, all parts of the Manial are poisonous. It holds the Guinness World Record for being the most dangerous tree in the world. Even standing under it during rain can cause blisters. It is also known as the beach apple, little apple of death, and tree of death. This plant grows all along the Caribbean coast in Central America and in the northernmost parts of South America and in southern Florida. Manial particularly favors regions near salty water. It grows in clusters, reaches up to 15 meters in height, and is covered with small greenish-yellow fruits that closely resemble apples. But don't be tempted to eat this fruit, no matter how sweet or tasty it looks. The Manial was allegedly responsible for the death of the famous explorer Juan Ponce de Leon in the 16th century. He founded the first European settlement in Puerto Rico and was the first European to land on the shores of Florida. According to legend, he was killed by an arrow smeared with Manial sap during a battle. The white, milky sap is extremely toxic. Skin exposure causes blistering burns, and if it gets into the eyes, it can lead to temporary blindness. All parts of the tree contain this sap, including the bark and leaves, so you shouldn't touch it with bare hands. However, some can consume Manial fruits without any harm. These are black-spined iguanas. These creatures even live among the branches of the tree. The reason for the tree's toxicity lies in the well-known toxin Forbol and other skin irritants that cause severe allergic dermatitis. Burning the tree can injure one's eyes if they are exposed to the smoke. The indigenous Caribbean peoples were familiar with the properties of the Manial and had several applications for it. For example, the sap was used for hunting, specifically for coating arrow tips. Additionally, the wood was used by Caribbean carpenters for centuries. They would first cut it and let it dry so the sap would evaporate. Today, there are no records of Manial-associated fatalities. It is said that some shipwrecked sailors ate the fruits of the Manial but didn't die. However, they still suffered from inflammation and blisters around the mouth. Other people have experienced serious gastrointestinal problems. This is what happened to radiologist Nicola Strickland and her friend, who accidentally tasted a Manial fruit on one of the Caribbean islands. The fruit was pleasantly sweet at first, but within moments, they felt a spicy taste in their mouths, which gradually turned into a burning sensation and throat tightness. The symptoms worsened over a couple of hours, making it impossible for them to swallow solid food due to excruciating pain and globulous sensation, otherwise known as a lump in the throat. Eventually, the symptoms began to subside within 8 hours, but their cervical lymph nodes became very sensitive. The story of the poisonous food experience alarmed local residents who were well aware of the fruit's sinister reputation. However, There's no need to worry about accidentally encountering a Mancinial tree. It's very hard to come across, and it's endangered by the U.S. But if you are determined to find one, head to the Flamingo section of the Everglades National Park, or the small islands of Florida such as Elliott Key and Key Largo.